In this video, I want to show you a real-world client website, from how we got the client all the way to design and development. This is the process of making a 20K plus custom website. All right, so here's what we will do. This is our Figma design, but the question is, how did we get here? I'll show you every step until how we got here, and then every step after this, how did we develop the site in Webflow? What challenges we had, and how did we end up with this finished website with all these animations and interactions? It actually came from one of my Webflow students, somebody who took my course, but also works in a company. And that company had this big project, as you will see. It's pretty big for a solo person or somebody with not enough experience with Webflow. They wanted an agency to take care of everything. And we had a few meetings. We talked about the scope of the project. I gave them a quote. They accepted it, and then we started working on it. All right, now let's dive in. But before zooming in and showing you everything here, we need to talk about how did we get here? What did we start designing with? Well, we typically start with a sitemap, and in this case, it was a very simple one. We just did it with just a few frames and groups in Figma. We have a home, we have how it works, we have like 2 programs, support, and then some affiliate page. That was like the initial basically sitemap that we had. Later on, some other pages got added here, and this is pretty normal. Like, you start with something, you go on, and then maybe other pages get added, but that's the start. And then we turned those like very like early sitemap. We got this done with the client. We turned it into a low fidelity wireframe. So this is essentially just to give an idea about what type of components we need per page. So each page will have, like, here is like a why section, or a section with steps, like how it's done, or like they have plans. So we added a section showcasing 2 plans. How did we get here? From the meetings with the client, they told us that they have 2 types of plans. That's why you see 2 boxes here. It's that simple. And then some features, some FAQs, and that's it. It's a very, very low fidelity wireframe. The next step, which was like doing actual wireframes with actual copy. So we used Relume wireframes, and note that this is a pretty old project, like almost 2 years old. So we did these just like in a manual way, adding some very simple wireframing sections from Relume, and then adding content. Not every piece of content is written down perfectly to the last word, but the overall number of sections and number of like elements within each section is pretty like clear. So we use these, as you will see, to design. So at this point, it was really important to know, like, if we have an FAQ, for example, roughly how many questions do we have, or like more like, okay, do we have a heading? Do we have a subheading for this? Things like this, or like here, do we have like 3 cards or 4 cards? Something like this is actually pretty crucial to the design, because that changes a lot. So we had to know things like this, and it might happen with other clients where they say, we don't know, and then we have to design based on that information that we have. But in this case, in this step, essentially, we try our best to solidify as much as we can, to basically make sure that the client gives us everything that they need, and we basically sign off every pieces of information that they want to have on their pages. As you see on this page, it's a bit special. They have like this 2-way of verification. So we put them in 2 boxes, and as you see, these are not like Relume wireframes. These are just boxes with some text in it, and that's fine. That's completely fine, because this gives us a lot of flexibility. So yeah, that's how we did it, and this is basically the entire wireframes that we copied from the Relume library, but yeah, we used the ones that we needed. So this is getting the content. Now, the content is the big part, but it's not everything. Another thing that we need is kind of like exploring style. They had a product in development. So the product that they were working on was not finished. They had this kind of like design system for it, and they wanted us to basically take this and elevate it based on the mood board, which we'll talk about in a second. Again, this is not finished. This is just a starting point, and we didn't need everything here. All we needed here was to know what does the client like? Do they like the purple color, the green color? What do they like? So we figured that out, and based on that, we created a mood board. And this mood board came from our meetings. We showed some websites to them. The old linear, if you remember, it was pretty purple. And this is around the same time, again, 2 years ago. We made a rough mood board, and we knew that they like it to be super purple. They wanted it to be dark. And this is what matters, like what type of websites they like. But also here's an interesting point. I do actually ask clients what type of websites they don't like. Sometimes they don't know, but I share enough websites with them until the point that they say, well, that one, I don't like it. It's good because then we know we don't go this direction, we go the direction that they like. Anyway, so this is the mood board. We had some idea for the design system, and we had the content and the wireframes. Based on those, you might think that we start basically designing everything. But no, because we're still in this phase where we try to completely solidify and understand what type of styles they actually like. We had an idea with the mood board, but now we are going to get some designs done and basically get that signed off. So for that, we did hero explorations, and this is what we typically do for every client, hero exploration, because the hero section is arguably the most important section. And yeah, we got to work. As you see here, we have some purple, we have the dashboard, and we designed these, and some of them have actually some sparkle on them. And I personally like these, but they didn't have that joy that we were looking for. The client was also not sure if they want to literally show their dashboard or not, because this is too busy and maybe the product changes. So you don't want to show the entire dashboard. We had also this option because they liked some globe and like some circles, or like having the earth in the background. We did also this one, which you will see we reused this design later on, and until we got to these. So we had these designs. As you see, we have literally like the globe here, maybe a bit outdated. We have this one, and as you see, like this one is pretty busy, but some clients do like this. Anyway, we had a few options with the globe and the minimized version of the dashboard, but yeah, as you see, a lot of exploration, and this is what it takes. At least that's been the case for us. A lot of exploration, a lot of design work, a lot of like going back and forth, trying to understand what the client likes and what is basically the business goal. In this case, they wanted to show that they are premium. They didn't want to show the dashboard and details like this. What's funny is like it's really difficult to get these details out in the first meeting that you just meet them. You don't know. They don't tell you that they don't want the dashboard to be in the hero because there is no designs for it. So we do the designs, we do the exploration, and then in that process, we understand what they like, what they don't like. So this is the final design that they liked, and we decided to go with this design. And based on that, then we start designing more. So as you see, we have some other sections. We put them, as we were like designing that hero section, we started like making a few other sections, and now we put them back next to the other sections to try to basically make sure that, okay, we are using the right design, that this is like the right flow that we want. And yeah, you get the idea. All right, now back to the main design page. This is where we took that section that everybody liked, and we designed the rest of the web page based on that section. And we typically start with the home page, because after the hero section, the home page is the most important thing that you want to design. So we designed each section essentially just based on those wireframes that you saw earlier. And looking at this, you might think that everything went just with a zero shot, basically just doing it once. But no, that's not the reality. So in reality, for every other section, we had some like different designs. In some cases, the designs are closer to one another. We have a solid base, that's the point here. And based on that solid base that we have, we do exploration. So these are the sections, you see each one of them. And we basically stitch these together. We make sure that they look also good one after another. This is also another important point. Now let me zoom in and show you a few details. It's about the illustrations and also like icons and things like this. This is why it's so important to have the text semi-final, like the text that we showed in wireframes. We want to create assets based on the content, not just have random icons, right? We want to have them based on the content, and for that, we need to read the content and figure out, okay, how can we represent this content with a visual in the best way possible? That's what we are doing here. And as you see, some of these, again, are very simple icons, which I will show you something really cool about these, how we got them animated. And also this like cool star here, which got me some headache. I'll tell you that. Another like really difficult section that we had was the pricing section. You'll see in a bit, but the pricing at the beginning, I thought it's gonna be only 2 tabs, just 2 tabs to show like 2 different sets of information. But soon after, we noticed that this is not what they want, even though you see it's designed. They wanted to have like much more control and buttons. Like they wanted to show different price if we click demo and then a few buttons for that, or live account and like multiple buttons for that. And they wanted everything to be completely dynamic. And for that, let's talk about the pricing calculator section. So this is the pricing section. We had to basically do the designs, as you see for demo. We have like type and risk and balance, and the client didn't know about this. We didn't know about this. How do you design something like this? Because this was not in the initial scope. And the moment this came up, I talked to the client and I was like, hey, this was not in our agreement. This is way too complex. This requires a lot of coding. So we agreed on a new scope just for this pricing section in addition to the project. And this is something understandable. The client also completely understand. They didn't know about it. We didn't know about it. On the website, the user can click one of these 2, and then they can click any of these tabs, and based on what they click, the pricing in the table, not just here, everything here gets updated. Not everything though, that's the pain. Everything that they wanted to update, and there was no rule for it. There was no like, okay, if this one is clicked, make these double as much or something like this. There was no rule. It was completely, I don't know, their own system. They gave us basically the table, and based on this took us some time to understand, to figure out, and I just added the code essentially here. I had to make a JavaScript array essentially, or like it's a actually JavaScript object that has all the numbers based on like which button you click. The information will be updated. All right, now that you've seen the Figma file, let's go with the live website. I'll show you the sections, how they are animated, how we thought about them, and where we needed. We go back to Figma and I'll show you the design. So starting with this hero section, you saw how we made the design. For the animation, we don't animate it in Figma. We just talk about it. We say that we want a stagger animation. These things, we want to minimally move them. Then we have this section. There are quite a few things going on here. For example, this effect that you probably have seen on other websites as well. And there are two very interesting details about it. One, that is, if I hover on one of these cards, the border basically gets highlighted where the mouse is and then kind of in a radius around it. That includes the other card as well. So hovering on this card, as you see, also makes this card highlighted. That's one interesting note about it. Another is, depending on which card you hover, you get that inside part of that card also a highlight. So you see the highlight is moving inside, but also in the border. About the border, it's not an actual border, it's two div blocks in each other, and that's the highlight. I want to make a video about this and make this available as a clonable. If you are interested, show the interest please with liking this video if you like it so far. Next we have this section, and as I told you, this caused me some headache. So in design we had these stars as an SVG. Actually it was a PNG, it was not even an SVG, it was just a PNG of stars. And I talked to the client and they wanted them to be animated. As you can guess, like, you cannot animate blinking stars with a PNG. So how did I do this? This is around the time that ChatGPT was just like starting, everybody was using it, and I used actually Slater. I will link Slater also below. I used basically ChatGPT within Slater to code this. So what I'm saying is here, create an SVG with like randomized dots representing stars, but it's not completely random, because as you see, the center of it, in the center, the stars are smaller, and as we go towards the basically edges of the circle, the stars get bigger, but it's not like completely linear, it's kind of random. Another interesting point is, you see these icons, as I mentioned, we got them animated, and these animations are completely automated. These are not like handcrafted, animations. We use the Lottie plugin for Figma. It's that simple. There's a plugin, you click any frame that you have a bunch of like different sets of animations. You can click the one you like and then you export that as Lottie. That simple. Here we have a bento, and as you remember, I showed in the wireframe that in a place we had 4 boxes. Having 4 boxes was important because we made a bento box, and having 3, the design would be completely different. So that's why it was important. And here you see, again, we have a bunch of some Lottie files. Some of them are, I believe we did like handcrafted. I think we did this one handcrafted, and this one is just a Webflow animation. You see this shape is just slightly moving. It doesn't have to be over the board, but yeah, that is it. And here we have this partnership that glows up. It's that simple. We scroll into view, it glows up, it adds a little bit of extra touch. Further down here, look at this section. As you saw here, we got this animated, and here you have some interactivity. So you can click request withdraw, and then you see this basically block showing up. And here we have kind of like the pricing minified. It doesn't do anything, it's just literally for clicking it. But designing this section was pretty interesting, so I want to show you. Design of this section was, by the way, also extra, because they didn't want this first, but then later on it got introduced. It was a little bit of scope increase, but yeah, as you see in a moment, this was counted separately because it required us to understand like fundamentally what they are trying to do and create like assets for that. So it's not like just basically putting 2 pieces of text together. And as you see, at the beginning, they wanted to show the dashboard, but then we did that, and then it was like too busy. So we decided to go with something much simpler. And as you see, we landed at that idea of showing these, this one as a minimized version, and this one as kind of like a chart going up. And that's how we came up with that section. So back to the website, if we scroll down, we don't have much else. We have these FAQs. They are very minimal. there is not much to talk about it. We have the CTA, again, very minimal, and this footer. And if we go to the design, we did some exploration, but not a lot because these are very simple and the client didn't want anything like crazy. We pretty much never have issues creating these sections because these are pretty standard, pretty simple. And as you see, we have like 2 types of CTAs. I don't remember why we had 2 types, but whatever. So that was the homepage, and you might think the rest of the pages are very simple, but that's not always the case because some other pages sometimes need like some extras as well. So for example, this affiliate page that I think is pretty interesting as well. So here we have this handshake, again, like handcrafted illustrations. Then we had like these 3 stages that I will show you in a second. And then this kind of like tier system. Even looking at this tier system, you see we have like multiple versions. This was very important to the client. And for things like this, you gotta look for what the client wants. In this case, they were asking us to make this section pretty nice. So that's why we did some extra exploration here. Anyway, so if we go back to the website, you see we have the sticky navbar. We can go to become a partner. I'll talk about navbar later, but yeah, we have this hero section with some sparkles here. And as we scroll down, I just noticed that we changed the design again. Like last second, they wanted different assets. Things like this happen. Sometimes we don't need to do everything in Figma. Things like this, if we get a new asset, we can just directly add it in Webflow. And that's what we did. And as you see, the kind of like this border animation is a bit different. You see each border has a different color. And here we have this very interesting like interaction. So you can click these or you can just scroll by to basically open them. It's kind of like tabs. And we are adding this option to the user because we are having a sticky section. It's not like the best experience typically, but in this case, we're allowing them to at least click, scroll, having like multiple options, make it much better. Anyway, let's go to another page that I think is pretty sweet, and that is how it works. And as you see, immediately we get this interaction and it's pretty self-explanatory. It says sign up, you have like these 2 options and then do whatever that you do. This is obviously a custom illustration we did, and then we animated this using Lottie. And here another detail, if you pay close attention, you see the icons are also animated, but they get animated only once. So they don't get like, too busy. Just one-time animation for an extra delight, but nothing more. The rest of the sections are pretty similar. The only remaining basically I want to show you is kind of like the hero sections here and a few like unique sections. So this one, you see we reused this asset from early on hero exploration. And this happens a lot. You do exploration, they don't like it for that particular place, but then you can use it somewhere else. And this happened here as well. The rest of this page is pretty simple. We have this tab, nothing too fancy. We have the pricing again, and yeah, here we have a few new assets. If you pay really close attention, you see that these dollar signs are moving a little bit. But again, we didn't want to be too much over the board with these interactions. So another page that I can show you is this 2-phase for the program, but there is not much here. And the only interesting page remaining becomes this page, support. Pretty simple, but this map with this kind of like highlight on it, again adding a little bit of extra touch. Here we have like these accordions. We made this custom illustration, and this is a Lottie with having their logo basically going around. Here's some custom illustrations again, but nothing too crazy. One other interesting element I want to show you is this sticky navbar at the bottom. So what we have here in the hero is basically a static navbar, meaning that everything will stay as is in every single page. But the navigation that you see in the bottom, it comes up after a few scrolls, and it shows the context of that page. So here on the left side, we have sections within that page that you can basically navigate to. And then on the right side, we have kind of like similar to the top nav bar. These are static, but this part is pretty interesting because it's very dynamic. It depends on, as you see, where you are, and if you click it, it goes to that section in that page. And I think that's pretty sweet to keep that context there, so the user knows where they are and where they can go. Now you might think this is everything, this is the entire process, but it's actually not. This is the visual part that I can easily share with you. A few other things that are not as easy to share, so I have to explain them, is, for example, communication. A lot of the time is spent communicating, understanding the client, doing some type of research, or like figuring something out. Another significant part of time is spent doing QA, quality assurance, making sure the website is running smoothly on every device. And the way we do it, we actually do some QA internally, and once we feel like things are fine, we share it with the client so they can do it on their own. But we don't do like QA religiously and like to the last point, because changes happen. So if we do a lot of development and then spend a lot of time making everything perfect and ship it to the client, they might say, well, actually, I want this thing in a different order. Things like this happens because as much as it looks beautiful and looks easy to share things on a Figma screen, as clients get the website on their actual devices, they feel it. Like when you scroll or when you click animations, it has a certain different feeling that cannot be conveyed just with Figma. That's why we don't do like crazy QA at the beginning. We just share with clients early so we can get feedback early. And the entire time I'm just looking at my desk, and with these phones, these are like pretty cheap, like really old phones, barely usable. Some of them I have to charge them just to run a website on them. But this is a part of testing, and I do this type of testing sometimes very early on. If I need to make an animation really performant, I do the testing early on an old phone, so I know, okay, can I go with this direction or not? These are things that are not that easy to share visually, but here I'm explaining them. And another time that I do a lot of testing is when we are closer to the deadline. Sometimes we use some commenting systems. For example, sometimes we use markup.io. Although not every time, sometimes we comment in Figma, and some other times we do it with chat, email, or even Loom videos. We don't have a very rigid system for that. I thought about it, like I wanted to make like one very rigid way of communicating these things with the client, but it doesn't work in reality because people are on different devices and there are different contexts. So at the end of the day, we are actually in reality for projects like these, and every project that we do, we are pretty flexible on how we communicate, where we communicate. It really depends on the stage of the project and the context of where the change has to happen. For example, if the change has to happen in Figma, a Figma comment is very easy. Or if it's a change in Webflow, a Webflow comment could be fine. But sometimes it's a mobile responsive issue, and very often we get those as screenshots in Slack or Discord or some place like this. All right, let's do a recap. I know it was a lot. We start by either the client contacting us or we finding them in any other way. In this case, they contacted us. We go into meetings, we figure out the scope, we start the project. After we start the project, we go into some sort of interviews to figure out like the details. So that's the wireframe. We figure out the styles with mood board and design systems. We do some exploration for the hero section and then for the rest of the homepage. And then we get actually sometimes into development depending on the scope, and sometimes we don't get into development until the rest of the pages are done. This really depends on project. For this project, for example, we got the designs like 80-90% done, and we started development because we had to start early. And that's where we get into Webflow. We start building, we try to test early, we try to ship it to the client, like to the webflow.io early, so we get feedback early. And that part is like a loop. We go into designing, developing, shipping, and then refining it until we are done. And that is essentially the entire process. Now, one last thing that I want to mention, it's probably on top of your mind, is about like what makes this project more valuable than another like similar project, for example. As you've saw, a lot of this project has been about exploration and doing like variations until we hit the point where the client really likes it. Please let me know in the comment sections if you do this level of explorations or not. Like with the designs, do you do less or more? And for the animations and interactions that I showed you, I have a few videos planned to show you how you can do them in Webflow, but I would love to know which ones you are more interested in, so I will make a video about that. All right, until the next one, thank you for watching, take care, and bye.